Welcome to Teaching Orchestra. The red line is a commissioned work for a beginning string orchestra. And when you're teaching beginners, it's a really good idea to start teaching bow placement. Yes, you can play quarter notes in any part of the bow, eighth notes in any part of the bow, half notes in any part of the bow. I get it. But what are the default positions for these rhythms? Do your students have a default? They probably do, but did you give it to them, or is it whatever they came up with? So think of it this way, and I still teach this at the high school level. What is the default bow placement for an eighth note? The middle of the bow. For all instruments, cellos and basses too, not the frog. So you're explaining this to beginners, and beginners, they might not have a very wide vocabulary yet. They might not know a lot of words yet. And a lot of my high school kids might not know what the word default means either. They probably heard it before, but they might only have a contextual idea about what it means, not a dictionary definition of what it means. So, okay, what does default mean? And I use an analogy. Okay, I open up a new Word document and start typing. What's the font? In Word, it's Calabri, which we all know is a trash font. So I have to go into the font menu, not the ribbon, but the actual menu, and I have to change it, and I have to set all the documents based on the normal .m template, right? And they make it really hard to do this, right? Because they want to push that trash font Calabri on you, even though we all know it's trash, and it's hard to change it. So as a society, we just deal with it and pretend that Calabri is an acceptable font, and it's not. But since it's so hard to change and everyone's using it, it becomes normalized. But I'm not going to be a part of that system. I'm not playing that game. Okay, that's pretty dramatic. Do I have to explain it that way to kids? No. But if I have a meltdown about fonts in the middle of class, will they remember it? Still probably no. But it's fun for me, and that's what I do. And the same way I feel about the Calabri font is exactly how I feel when we're about to play some finger patterns using the pepperoni pizza rhythm or Mississippi mud pie, if that's what you're into, and they set their bows at the frog. I just remind them, hey, let's play eighth notes in the middle of the bow. If I just remind them, hey, let's play these eighth notes in the middle of the bow, please, it only works for that exercise, and when they're done, they immediately go right back to the frog. I have to change their default settings, and it's a process. I have to program it into them. Otherwise, I just end up with cellists who are seniors in high school who learn the Haydn G major concerto for solo and ensemble, and they play everything at the frog, and I ask them, why are you so angry? Angry? Yes, angry. What did Haydn ever do to you? Did he insult one of your ancestors or something? What's the problem with Haydn? The G major concerto is supposed to be happy, and it sounds like you're having an argument with the composer. So long story short, if you want to avoid that future conversation in 7 years, start having them think about this early on. There are 6 different rhythms used in the red line. Where are you going to have them start in the bow for each of the rhythms? Okay, here are some half notes, right? Where are you going to have them start? You could have them start in the lower half, and that gives them plenty of bow to use. And I'd probably start at the balance point, because in context, that seems to work better. But if you look at measure 17, the low strings have a whole slew of half notes in a row, so you might want to have them play a little closer to the frog here. But for the upper strings, they only really have 2 half notes at a time. So that's a decision you have to make, and what default bowing are you going to use for future pieces and future performances. Now the quarter notes. The best spot on average is probably the lower middle of the bow, somewhere in between the middle and the balance point. You're going to have to watch this because your lower strings are going to end up trying to be too low, and your upper strings are going to probably tend to be too high. So try to standardize it so everybody's in the same place. Find that compromise, usually somewhere in between the balance point and the middle of the bow. Eighth notes are typically played in the middle, but they're all set up by quarter notes here in the red line, so they're probably going to be played on either side of the middle depending on whether they're on beat 2 or beat 4. Right here, in the case of the reverse pepperoni pizza rhythm, these are probably all going to be slightly below the middle and not in the middle. So you might be thinking, this is a little bit too much. Why does this matter? Why are you using your class time for this when you could be doing a million other things? Well, because bow placement is going to have an impact on a lot of other things too. Tone, rhythm, tempo. If half your orchestra is playing quarter notes at the frog and the other half are playing the upper half of the bow, you're telling me that they're going to naturally use the same amount of bow, the same amount of weight, and play together just as well as if they were all in the middle? There's a lot going on physically, and sometimes we try to use this mind over matter approach and force the rhythm and tempo onto your students, disregarding the natural world around us. But the laws of physics are in fact laws and not suggestions. You're not going to change that unless you happen upon a reality gem. And if you're in the MCU, they're reality stones, but anyway, you can't change it. So what can you change? It's the bow placement. And if you standardize them, you're going to have an easier time, not just in the Red Lion, but forever. In my next episode, I'm going to go over legato style and come up with some strategies that could be a game changer in your classroom. I hope to see you then.